Is sorcery still a sin today? And if so, how? Well, if you go back in the Old Testament, you're looking, of course, at the Hebrew language in the Old Testament. There are several words that translate into the word witchcraft or sorcerer or witch or something like that. Keshaf is one of them. That's what you'll see in Exodus chapter 22 and verse 18. You shall not allow a sorceress to live. Nahash is another one, sometimes translated divination, which is somebody who tries to read the signs, the omens, and so forth. Deuteronomy 18 and verse 10, there shall not be found among you anyone who uses divination. And then the Hebrew word anan, observing times and astrology and all of that sort of thing. Once again, the Old Testament condemns all of those things. And the question is, so why would the Old Testament condemn those things? And it's not complicated. It's because when a person appeals to those things, they're trying to appeal to supernatural powers in order to attain some supernatural insight or to attain some kind of supernatural protection. The problem in all of those cases is that they bypass God. The reason that God did not want his people doing these kinds of things, which is what the pagans did, is because what that says is we don't trust God. We don't trust him to protect us. We don't trust him to tell us the things that we need to know, and so we want to know more, and so we're going to go to these pagan ways of trying to discern things. So they failed to trust Jehovah with their care, failed to be content with what he had already told them about the future, the things they needed to know, which is what he told them, and not the things necessarily that they wanted to know. Now, when you fast forward to the New Testament, which is where we find the word pharmakeia in the Greek, it is a word that we, of course, get our word pharmacy from, which immediately conjures up images of drugs and so forth. But it's translated in the New Testament by the terms witchcraft or sorcery, again, depending on which translation you're reading from. And you say, so what does that have to do with drugs or medicine? And the relationship there is that in the New Testament age, that they would sometimes use potions laced with various types of drugs, mind-altering stimulants and so forth to control people, and usually for nefarious purposes. And so it is for that reason listed among the works of the flesh in Galatians chapter 5 and verse 20. And of course, it's used several times in the book of Revelation, always in a bad sense. Once again, it's sinful. Sorcery today would be sinful because, again, it trusts in the methods and the magic and the manipulation of things that are created instead of trusting in the Creator who made those things. Now, the person who asked this had a follow-up question, which I do not have on the screen. What about its use? The use of sorcery in movies and in video games and things like that. And my answer to that would simply be, well, are you mature enough to know the difference between fiction and nonfiction? I mean, if you're reading something that is fiction, do you recognize that as fiction? If you're reading something that is nonfiction, something that is true, do you recognize that as the truth? The Bible is certainly nonfiction. Harry Potter, fiction. And the question is, do we realize that? I mean, when you're reading things like this, do you make those distinctions? Can you see the difference between a movie and real life? Do you know that what happens in movies is not real life most of the time? Do you know the difference between what you're doing in your video game and real life? Do you understand there's a difference there? What's happening in the video game, that's not real life. And so whether it's Harry Potter or whether it's the Wizard of Oz, they all have witches, but very few people take those seriously. Are there some? Yeah, probably. But I would trust that people of God have a better mind than that. Is it okay to watch those movies, to play those video games? Hey, that's a judgment call. And so if you struggle, with that line between reality and fiction, then you might be better off leaving it alone. But that's a judgment call. And certainly, if your conscience offends you as you watch those movies or play those games, you just need to leave it alone. That's Romans 14 and verse 23. Whoever has doubts is condemned if he eats, and that's in the context of eating meat that's been sacrificed to idols. He says if you doubt that, whether it's okay to eat that, he says it's not. I mean, it's not a problem if you want to eat it, but if you have doubts about that, then if you go ahead and eat it anyway, you're condemned, because the eating is not from faith, and whatever does not proceed from faith is sin. And so, yeah, the general answer to that, is sorcery still a sin today? Yes, it is. And what about in movies and so forth? Well, that depends. Surely we can tell the difference between fiction and nonfiction.